Today we're talking about the Apple Watch Ultra, and there have been a lot of reviews out there, a lot of good reviews, so I definitely want to steer you towards those ones for a lot more in-depth reviews, but for mine is specifically going to be around, can this watch replace my fitness watch? Because that's what I use a watch for. I don't use this thing for notifications or anything like that. I'm not going to wear this on a daily basis. I'm just going to wear it for my running workouts and maybe for some walks in the park and gym workouts and different things like that. But overall, I will not wear this when I'm just going out at work, different things like that. Apple has gone and said this gets 19 hours of GPS battery, and we're going to test that out and see if that's true or not. Well, I have to say, in the keynote, they talk about up to 36 hours of normal use, and then they say up to 60 hours on low power settings, which is not out yet. It's coming soon, or it's coming soon. So don't think about the 60 hours, just think about the 36 hours. And in that case of normal use, I've been getting 36 hours. Now, when you talk about actual GPS battery life is essentially what I use, because I use this watch here, the Coros Pace 2, and it's $199. I have a review of this. Feel free to check this out if you're interested. And it also has one of these lovely dials as well, so it's not nearly as good as the feedback that you get in the Apple Watch or any of the Apple Watches or the Apple Watch Ultra. So again, let's dive a little bit into the battery life. So first thing I noticed was that with a 28-minute run, this is not in low power mode, this is all the settings out of the box, just leaving it as is. It took 6% with a 28-minute run. When using it to go on a walk, it was 84% when I started, and then 75% after I finished the walk. So roughly 9% was taken out of the battery life. With my usage that I've used this for the past couple of weeks, I received roughly 8 to 10 hours of GPS battery in the normal mode that it comes out of the box. Now, you can certainly change this by changing it to low power mode. You can also change this by turning off the always on display, but I was thinking, let's leave it in its default settings and see what it gets. So with that said, 8 to 10 hours in the normal use mode. So I wish that they would specify what this particular, this sort of thing is a mileage may vary. And this is with not just Apple Watch, this is with any of your phones, any electric cars. All of these things are based on how you specifically use it. So for example, if you were watching a YouTube video or something like that on this, or the screen was always on and you were playing around with it and messaging people all the time, something like that. Or if you were in GPS mode the entire time, how long would the battery last? All of these things are scenarios that I did not necessarily try, but doing the calculations and seeing what it was like, seeing all the workouts that I was able to do, and calculating up how much battery life it took just using it for workouts, I got 8 to 10 hours. So overall, in the normal setting, not very long. And talking about 8 to 10 hours, in the keynote about this particular watch, they were specifying that it'll last for a marathon, which for a marathon, it's 26.2 miles. So anywhere from, let's say, 2 hours to, let's give or take 10 hours. It specifies that it should last when you do a marathon. With that very wide range, it will last if you are on the lower end of that 10 hours. And yeah, so do with that what you may, because again, your mileage may vary. If you were to walk an entire marathon, let's say at 20 minutes per mile, it would be roughly 8.5 hours to 9 hours of walking. So with that said, if you were in this out of the box setting, I don't think you would get that. Like, I don't think it would last throughout the entire marathon. Now, the other thing that was specified was that it would last for a Ironman event. So if you know anything about Ironman events, it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile run. So a marathon to finish. So I did an Ironman event 9 years ago. It took me 11 hours and 50 minutes to complete it. And I'm fairly fit, probably like average in there. So, and definitely not slow by any means. So, you get a deadline of 17 hours to complete the Ironman event. So with that said, would it last the worst case scenario if you were at that cutoff of 17 hours? Very doubtful. And also I tested this in the low power mode, and I don't think you would get 17 hours for that either. So when Apple specifies this, it drives me insane because it's clearly at the faster end of the Ironman events. So that's something that's really annoying to me. I don't think it would last that long in even the low power mode. Maybe in this new low power mode that they specified, but again, that's not something that is out yet, so I don't really want to talk too much about what doesn't exist. So again, with my usage, it wouldn't last, and it doesn't hold up to the claims that Apple was saying. And again, I was using this again just to do my daily runs and walks and what have you. So with that said, let me move over to a little bit more about some of the pros and cons of this watch. And they sort of align with my earlier Apple Watch, which I reviewed a few years ago, which was the Apple Series Watch 3. And this one's the 8 series, so just 5 years change, and they are quite a bit of difference. So first off, the screen is super bright. It's really, really cool to see this, and honestly, it's kind of odd because when you compare this to my iPhone, it's actually much brighter than my iPhone as well. 2000 nits it's rated at. Also a cool thing, it can get LTE, so that means that you have to pay a little bit more monthly fee for this, which is kind of annoying, but it's not as much as a new phone plan or anything like that, but you can get LTE for this, and then you can almost just use this watch as your walking around watch. Now again, with only quote unquote 36 hours of normal usage, would you want to carry it around with you all the time and have to charge it every night? Not something that I particularly would want to do. I would want it to last at least a few days in their particular modes, being able to walk around, being able to, do workouts and what have you. Another thing is that it's dual band GPS. So most GPS watches like my Coros Pace 2 only have single band frequencies. So this has dual bands, and from what I could see from the testing, doing a track workout and walking around in the forest preserve and just running around the neighborhoods here and just seeing where it actually placed me, talking about like I was running on the sidewalk, did it actually place me GPS wise on the sidewalk? And yes, it was very much more accurate than my Coros Pace 2. A very difference in cost between the Coros Pace 2 and the Apple Watch Ultra. You're talking about $650. So you can, again, buy like 4 of these Coros Pace 2s. So if they break, you can just replace them. But again, the accuracy is much closer in terms of GPS location. Now, when you're talking about distance, the distance is pretty spot on in terms of one versus the other. It really wasn't super far off. The other thing, when we talk about accuracy, heart rate monitor. Heart rate monitor on this was much more accurate than the Coros Pace 2. And that's something of note because when you're doing something in terms of fitness and comparing, let's say, doing a workout or you're doing a race and you're racing professionally, you definitely want to look at an accurate heart rate versus an inaccurate heart rate. So I found that between this and the Coral Space 2, this was about 10 beats per minute better in terms of accuracy towards the Coral Space 2. Now talking about, again, the cellular use of this, you can text people on this, you can use Siri. It's not super easy to text back on this in terms of if you're just using your finger to text back, because it is a very small interface. Even though it's the largest Apple Watch that they have, it still isn't the greatest, but it works best if you're able just to reply like with Siri. So another thing, while talking about this particular watch, there's also something that was mentioned about sleep tracking. I've also been testing out the Oura Ring. So I've been comparing these two, and honestly, comparing the Oura Ring versus the Apple Watch, they're very similar in terms of how accurate they are in sleep tracking. I think the Oura Ring is definitely more comfortable in terms of like not wearing this while you sleep. Also, in terms of the light output, this heart rate sensor that you have here is just much more brighter than the one on the Oura Ring. So that's something to note as well, is that if you particularly are sensitive to bright lights and you have your watch on, I noticed that it's super bright and, you know, sometimes borderline tough to sleep when you have this thing on. But the other thing was that I compared it to the Coral Space 2, and the Coral Space 2 was completely off. It said like you had 2.5 hours of sleep, and then both of the Oura Ring and the Apple Watch said I had 5 hours of sleep. So much different results there, but again, comparing those three, definitely the Oura Ring and the Apple Watch were better at tracking sleep. And that's something that's really nice, is that it was able to track sleep, but I'll go over the cons of what it wasn't doing very well in that just in a bit here. And I would say overall, you know, the watch is pretty nice. It feels very premium in your wrist. It doesn't feel like it would be something that's super fragile. But again, because it's so heavy, I'm a little bit worried about it like scratching other things or hitting it against the table or anything like that. This came with the trail loop bands, which I selected, and I selected white just because I wanted to see what it looked like, and I didn't really like I wanted this to be something that I can wear and utilize with like any outfit. I imagine this will get pretty dirty because it's a white band. Let's go into sort of the negatives of this watch. So talking about some of the things here, I didn't really like the slow boot up time. So if I compare this to my Coral Space 2, my Coral Space 2 boots up in 6 seconds. This takes about 36 seconds to load up, which is kind of frustrating if, let's say, it rebooted or something like that before you started a race, and then everybody's off to the race and you're sort of sitting there waiting for this to reboot. 36 seconds, race time, big issue. Another thing is, this is something I complained about with the Apple Watch 3, which they haven't seemed to remedy this. Now, once you finish a workout, you can see the immediate stats. So you can see like your general pace and all these other things. So let me go to this here actually. Let's say that we start it, workout started, right? And to end it here, we have to use our finger to swipe it, and then we can pause it or hit end. So now if I hit end, the problem is that it ends. I can't actually review it on my watch. So if I pause it, I can see, okay, cool. Ran for 19 seconds, or 19.21 seconds. Here's what was going on, blah, 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 blah. I can see any of the other things here as well. Okay, cool. If I hit end, where did it go? Why can't I see what actually happened here? So, okay, cool. Let me go to my activities, right? It's definitely going to be in my activities, right? Okay, activities. Wait, what did I do? Where are my workouts? Why can't I see this on my watch? How maddening is that? Like, it's an $850 total watch. Why do I have to use my phone to review what I just did? That's insanity. Like, Apple, come on, like, allow us to review this on the actual watch. That's just insane that you don't have that. This whole, like, you've been watching me put in my passcode for this. Why do I have to continuously put a passcode in for this? That's something that's also crazy to me too. Like, I shouldn't have to continuously put in a passcode for this. I understand you can access a lot of things on here, but you should have the ability to turn that off if you don't want to use it. If it's on your wrist, then it doesn't ask you nearly as many times to enter your passcode, but it seems to be something that, from a person who doesn't use an Apple Watch all the time, like, I would not want to enter my passcode in all the time. It's super annoying. Also, something to note, I was talking about the action button, right? And you can use that to actually start. It's not the setting right out of the box, which is perfectly fine. Anybody who is an Apple Watch user probably is not used to this. They're used to doing that countdown. But one of the things that I wanted to note here is, so let's say we're doing a workout and go into here, and you can see on the top left corner here that we just got the GPS signal to be fine, and then you can hit this to actually, the action button to actually start. But the action button only is able to start it. You can't use it to pause, you can't use it to stop. You can only use it to lap, to record a lap. You always have to swipe to actually get to the end. But when you do have this on and it is locked, you can't do anything on the touchscreen. So this is actually something that I would recommend if you are going on a workout or something like that. Now the problem is, like, to actually touch anything or to do anything other than pause and start is you have to hit this crown and then it'll do this. So it's not exactly seamless. There's not a really easy way of doing that. There's not a way of, like, using the passcode to start it up or anything like that. So that's one thing to mitigate the issue that I've been having with the run pausing, saving, and so on and so forth, because I went on a run and it actually paused, canceled the run, and saved it. So my run yesterday, which was 5 miles, it ended up being like 3 different run walks, and it randomly started up again, and so on and so forth. So a huge issue that I would say that I don't think Apple has really figured out a good way of resolving this issue. So these other buttons, what do they do and why can't I use them? So when I push this is the multifunction button. Punch in that code again. So it'll do this. It'll let me see any of the other apps open. Okay, then what does this button do? Oh, it allows me to go into all the other apps. I don't understand, Apple. Why can't I use the action button to do something other than a split? Why can't I program on any of these other buttons to do anything else? Like, that's insane. Like, come on. Like, none of this is intuitive to actually working out. And again, that sort of comes back to my point. But I'll get to the point eventually here. But Apple, get your together and allow us to use this action button to pause, to save the workout, to do something. Why do I always have to use the touchscreen to save or end the workout? That's nonsense. The watch, it's not super comfortable in terms of the weight. It's 61 grams, so roughly double the weight of the Coros Pace 2. I understand it has to fit the battery, it has to be premium, and it also has to be durable, right? So understandable on why it's pretty heavy. but it also makes it a little bit uncomfortable to wear because it is so heavy. Okay, so we're back to the Alpine Loop. So here we go. We can talk about this. So this is the Alpine Loop, okay? So one of the things to note here is tightening it and loosening it. So you can see how it's going through pretty easily here. Now let me try to put this on my wrist. So we'll put that in here, and then we'll try to straighten this out here. So I have to tighten this here, and now this is a little bit off, but then we're going back here on the other side, and then we're trying to slip this hook through one of these here. And there we go, we're in there. So, but now let's say this is kind of too tight. I want it looser. I'm not really going for a workout or anything. I kind of want this just to be looser. Okay, so now I'm gonna put it down a couple of them. And okay, so now I have this weird little extra spacing here. So now I have to pull this on the other side here so that it gives up some of that room. So that's a little bit better. But this Alpine Loop is just not great for adjustments. You really have to know which loop you want to put it in, and hopefully it's comfortable for you. For me, I found it very tedious and very annoying to adjust. Like if I want to retighten it, then it's really tough to move it back and forth. And honestly, just using a silicone band, I would much rather prefer. Or even the Velcro bands that they also have too. Wouldn't recommend the Alpine Loop. It is okay in terms of comfort, but again, this is a cloth kind of deal. So if it gets wet, it's wet. You know, you don't really want to take a shower with it, but how else are you going to clean it? And if you're going to bed right after your shower, or putting it taking a shower in the morning and then going to work, then it becomes pretty annoying to have this be wet on your clothes or anything like that. It's just not super intuitive. Another weird thing is, why can't I listen to music or anything on the watch? Like if I go to Spotify, it requires me to have some sort of Bluetooth connection to listen to something. If I can listen to a phone call on my watch, why can't I listen to music or a podcast or something like that on the watch itself? Like, I don't really understand that. You can't really customize the metrics on your workouts. It has some of the features that you would want, but there's no way to organize them, which is kind of maddening to me too. If you have all these new metrics, if you have, your cadence sensor, your power sensor, all this other stuff, like why wouldn't you be able to customize that to what you would want? I mean, Apple prides itself on making software, right? But it makes software their way. They don't really talk to too many people or really build off of like what Garmin has or what Coros has or anything like that and allow you to customize it. They sort of just say, this will work for the majority of people, and if people want to see the other ones, they'll just scroll through to the other metrics, which is super annoying. I don't really understand that at all. Another thing, we were talking about the sleep tracking, but this one does not keep track of my naps. So I would take a nap and it would have issues tracking naps. So it would never track my nap, versus the Aura Ring tracked my naps, which is something that is also annoying. Like, if you have a sleep tracker, you want it to account for and cover for, tracking your sleep. And I wish it would get a little bit more in depth on saying like, oh, did my recovery do well or anything like that. It doesn't really do what Garmin does in terms of battery, like your battery recharge kind of deal. And it doesn't do what the Aura Ring does in terms of saying like, you should really focus on sleeping more, or, doing this to help you sleep or what have you. This watch costs $850 with taxes. It's super expensive, and it's in fact more expensive than the phone that I have, the iPhone 13 mini. And that's crazy to say, but it's not outrageous because there's some adventure watches like Garmin watches, as well as even Coros watches, as well as Suunto watches that are that costly. So I'm not saying this is outside of the realm of those. I think it's on par, but in terms of what people care about when they buy those particular watches, they really care more so about the workout aspect of it. I'm just telling you from my experience that I don't wear this watch all the time. I wear this watch when I run and only when I run. And when I'm done running, I turn it off and then keep it there. And this thing lasts roughly about a month of GPS battery life just from me using it. Now, if I was using this on the daily and seeing notifications on this and so on and so forth, it would definitely not last as long. Probably about, let's say, 2 weeks. But again, 2 weeks versus 36 hours. Like, one of the things that I don't want to have to worry about is charging this thing all the time. And that's something that I really like about this Coral Space 2 is the battery life. This is something that would just irritate me to the max. A couple of days, I just can't see myself using this. And I tried again using this, for just workouts, and 8 to 10 hours of GPS mode. So let's say that lasts me a week maybe. So a week, that's not too bad. I would say that's probably within the realm of, let's say this battery degrading quite a bit. But again, I don't know how badly these batteries degrade. I imagine in 2 years it would probably be pretty bad, and I'd probably be close to, like, let's say 2 or 3 days, and that would probably annoy me, and worried about if it would last for an entire race. That's one of the things that I cannot allow to be like something that it would like drive me insane to worry about that. In fact, that's why I bought this new watch, was because the Garmin watch that I had was running out of batteries too quickly, and I wanted a replacement for that so that I know that it would last for a half Ironman event, which was roughly 6 to 7 hours. Phantom drain. So what is phantom drain? So that means that I turned this thing off, and I would use it, let's say, like I would go to sleep and then use it for my next day workout. I saw a loss of roughly 2% of battery life overnight from it just sitting there and me turning it off and turning it back on. I understand, again, it does have to use the Wi-Fi and blah, 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 and it has to update anything or receive notifications. But again, 2% overnight, that kind of seems a little bit much, and this is a brand new watch. So that's something to note, is that if you were to use this as just your fitness watch, which I was doing, you're going to see some phantom loss. And that's a huge bummer, but it happens with all watches, but it typically happens with watches more so that use a lot more of the processing speed. But again, 36 seconds to boot up, 6 seconds to boot up. So just keep in mind what you're using these watches for. For me, Apple Watch, not going to be something that I use because it is just not catered to people who are doing workouts. It just isn't. And the most annoying part about that, I think, when Apple is trying to cater this to, let's say, people who do workouts or people who are ultra marathoners and so on and so forth, like, they are not catering to these people, because if they were, these things would be upfront, completed, and done. They aren't, and they aren't, like, they're trying to cater to these people, but they just aren't. Because if they were, they would come up with like a slimmed down version of this, and they would cater it just so that it can do battery life and it can be as accurate as possible in terms of GPS signal and heart rate. They're just not doing that because they have to live and abide by what most Apple Watch users are. People who wear this on the daily and trying to get more battery life out of that. Granted, versus, a lot of the Apple Watches, which, is it'll maybe last throughout the entire day. 3 days is great improvement upon, a day with 24-hour battery life. But again, that's still to me not enough. Apple Watches are the best smartwatches out there because they allow you to do a bunch of things without even pulling this out of your pocket, which is super cool. I really like that. But the thing is, it's just another accessory because you need your phone to have this. You can't just use this by itself. And for those who have tried, lots of people have tried, you just don't get the full functionality out of this that you have now depended on this. So again, it's just another accessory to this. So this package, if this is $700 and this is $800, you're paying $1,500 for the package deal because one cannot run without the other. Again, a holistic thing to merge you into Apple's ecosystem. Okay, I love some of the Apple products. I have a MacBook Air. I have an iPhone and Beats Fit Pro. I have a bunch of Apple products. So I want them to succeed, but they're just not doing what I expected out of this particular watch. When they talk about divers, they talk about ultra marathoners, they talk about Ironman events, all of these things. I think you could do a marathon for, a top tier marathoner or, somebody who's going under 5 hours running. I think it very much can do that. But that isn't ultra marathon. That isn't Ironman events. So to say that they can do these, it's just not true. And yeah, I just want to make sure that people who do these things know that it can't, as in it doesn't have the battery life to do this. And if it was to do, like, some of these watches have the capability to do this with, not low power battery mode. And that's one thing that I want to note is that the accuracy that I was talking about this is with all of those settings, like default out of the box. It's not low power battery mode. In low power battery mode, the accuracy will definitely drop and all of these things will not be equal in terms of, the battery life. But all that said, it's a good watch. Should you buy it? I'm going to lean towards no. I think they can do better. Or the other thing is to note is there will be some people that do accuracy tracking with this new low power battery mode that eventually gets rolled out. And I would say wait for those reviews before you think about purchasing it. And also think about how long this battery will last you. Not just right now, but when the battery degrades as well. Because if you're looking at, let's say, an ultra marathon that's taking you a couple days to do, okay, low power battery mode right now is not going to get you through that. It'll probably get you through 12-ish hours, 12 to 14-ish hours of GPS mode. But again, I'm wondering what this new 60-hour battery low power mode will do and what the accuracy is going to look like in terms of heart rate and in terms of GPS signal. Is it going to switch to single band? Is it going to, increase the amount of time that it takes those GPS points? Is it going to be like every 30 seconds? Is it going to be every 10 seconds instead of every second? Like all of those things need to be taken in consideration. And it's something that you as the consumer should squeeze out of Apple because we should all be able to get to know this. With that said, it's a good watch. I'm not going to recommend it unless this low power battery mode is the savior that everybody's been talking about. If you want the best all around smartwatch / GPS watch, this is going to be your jam. This has always been the mixture, the jack of all trades, the master of none. But that's just it. It is the master of none. It is not amazing at this, and it's not amazing at this. It is good all the way across at a lot of things. With that said, thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.